What is author marketing mastery through optimization, you ask? I'm going to tell you. It is absolutely, bar none, the best way for authors to make a living selling their books. Are you tired of feeling like you have to be on social media 50 hours a week just to sell a few books, and then frustrated when that time doesn't actually lead to any book sales? Are you tired of hearing people say that you just have to be patient with the social media game for a long time so that you can build that following and that trust? Yeah, I was too, because there's only one of me, and Ammo solves that problem. Now here's the deal. It's a system that can actually guarantee results, and I'm not the one doing the guaranteeing, and I don't think that Steve Piper, who founded Ammo, would literally say that it's a guarantee. But what's a guarantee here is that when you spend advertising dollars in a right way, you get results and you're profitable. Okay, the concept here is if you spend $1 and make $2, you are profitable. And Ammo does that for its authors. I want you to check out the link in the show notes because this program has the ability to change your life. And hey, it's not for everyone. If you're a traditionally published author, it might not work for you because your margins will be too small to get profitable advertising on your own. That's something you'll have to take up with your publisher. But if you're self-published, if you're indie published, this thing could be great for you. If you have a few books out, especially if you're a series writer, this is a game changer. The whole podcast is now part of the Ammo family. So you'll notice every Wednesday, this show is Ammo Edition. But even on Mondays, you're listening to a show that exists because this author, this host of the podcast uses Ammo and makes money selling books. It's a beautiful feeling. I encourage you to check it out. Today is the 21st of June, and that means it is the longest day of the year for us Northern Hemispherites. It's the shortest day of the year if you're in the Southern Hemisphere. I do have a few listeners in Australia from time to time. Not too many people from South America. I'd love for that to change, but because this podcast is in English, it might not ever be a really huge deal in like Peru or Chile. I love Spanish-speaking countries. And I know that not all South American countries are Spanish-speaking. That's not what I'm saying. I just happen to love Spanish-speaking countries. So, like Mexico. It appeals to me. I wonder, do you feel that way? Do you ever feel just really drawn to a culture? Sometimes I think back on how I developed the things that interest me, and I wonder if I am, appropriating. I don't think I am. I think I'm just fascinated by something that's not like me. And maybe some of the romanticism would go away if I thought about it a little bit more. In fact, I can give you an example of that being the case. My favorite baseball player growing up was Ryne Sandberg. And actually, that's a good example in and of itself. The luster has really disappeared after he took up a little bit of broadcasting for the Cubs in recent years. And I find him to be more boring than chewing on sawdust. Yeah, just not a lot of character in the broadcasting booth. But anyways, you don't come here to listen to my reflections on baseball. Oh, well, I guess I should finish that story, though. So anyways, Sandberg was born in Spokane, Washington, and I found myself, by good luck and fortune, accepted to the Masters of Fine Arts in Fiction-focused program at Eastern Washington University in Spokane, Washington. And when I got there, it quickly delusterized for me. That's definitely a word, delusterized. And then by the time I left, I had fallen back in love with it. So do with that what you will. It was a culture I wasn't used to. It took me a little while to find my stride. By the time I did find my stride, it was time to go. That's sort of like life for you. I will report that my ads are really going gangbusters right now for Amazon. Since this is Ammo Edition of TRBM, you want to know that my ads are doing well. They had tanked after I was restricted, and it took me a little while to kind of figure out what they wanted from me. Once they brought me back, you'll hear me discuss that a little bit with my guest, who is MG Heron. Matt MG Heron is my guest for today's show, and he has a ton of really good information about his process. What I liked about having Matt on is that he's the first guest that I've had from the Ammo program who is actually newer than me. He's having more success than I am, and he has more books out there than I do, and he's done a ton of advertising before. So he has a lot of experience, but in terms of being an ammo student, he's newer to it than I am. And so it was cool to hear him think through the process and in some ways be on the same kind of curve as he is. We're both learning some of the same lessons. He's probably less stubborn than I am, which helps him as well. But yeah, phenomenal conversation, some eye-opening beliefs that he carries around that I think have helped him and challenged me and got me thinking about what I want to value in this process. So I do hope that you enjoy this conversation with MG Herron. And don't forget, if you're interested in ammo, I've got links all over the place in the show notes. It's pretty hard to miss them. Check it out. You won't be disappointed you did.
This is TRBM Ammo Edition. If you're a published author and want to make a living writing books and selling them to avid readers, you've come to the right place. There's simply no program that's more successful at driving readers towards the books you've written. So the only thing you have to worry about is writing a great book. And the system within Ammo takes care of the rest. Thanks for listening to this conversation.
Well, it's good to get to talk to you finally. Well, I know we've talked a little bit in the data review calls, but nothing like this.
We go back and forth quite a bit on Facebook Messenger, always asking each other questions. Hey, is today a really crappy day for sales for you too? And sometimes the answer is no. So that's fun.
Yeah. I've had good days. I've had bad days. Sometimes they're just days.
Since I got let out of Facebook jail, which I think I told you this, but they never gave me a reason. They never told me why they did it. I sent in, requesting them to review it, and I would get them being like, be patient with us while we look into this and blah, blah, blah. And then all of a sudden, just without any explanation, I was instated again. They said my ad was approved and I'm back. Yeah. And I never got a reason for it. So a bit of a downside to being beholden to Facebook, but every system has its holes, I think.
Yeah, isn't that just like a tacit admission of guilt if they don't give you a reason? It's like,
exactly.
Sorry, it's our fault.
Yes.
We messed up.
Yeah.
I think, like they they're tweaking and changing things all the time. It's software. Mm-hmm. It's never done, right? They're always iterating, improving, changing due to releasing new features or adhering to new privacy laws or having a better way to do the statistical modeling. Like they're always messing with something, and you never know when they're doing it or what they're messing with. Amazon's the same way. Like I saw the author community was blown up the other day about, oh God, Amazon has removed the Serious carousel from our product pages.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, maybe they made that change. Maybe that was, what they're doing, and you just have no control over that, which is, one of the reasons I like selling direct.
Yes. Yeah, likewise. It reminds me so much, and I don't remember the first person on this podcast who said it, but the idea of owning your email list is ultimately the only way that you become, I think, failure proof. I was thinking of like recession proof or something along those lines. But if you own your email list, especially if it's large enough, there's nothing that can stop you from selling every book you have to publish in your life. Unless you write shitty books. And I do think that can be a concern for some people. Do you ever, I guess I want to start there because I don't know as much about your writing process or who you are as a writer. I read one of your books. Thank you for sending me the ebook, or excuse me, the audiobook. It was great.
You bet.
What's your process? How do you know that you've written a quality book? What are you doing before the public sees it?
Yeah, I mean, I have a whole editing process, but I also feel like it's not really my job to judge the quality of a book.
Okay.
I feel like people get caught up in that, and that it's really the audience's job to tell me, the market's job to tell me whether I did a good job or not. For me, I'm just telling the stories I want to tell, and I do care about the quality. So I have an editorial process where, I hire editors. I use beta readers to give me feedback. But, ultimately, I just write the story that wants to be told. I don't have a real good way to explain it other than that. I certainly think as I've gotten more experienced, I've gotten better at writing stories that are marketable.
Yeah.
The mistakes I made early in my career, like portal science fiction, kind of a niche genre. I could have picked a better genre, right? I could have picked a genre that was easier to sell. That's on me.
Yeah.
And then when I did the Gun Files, sci-fi mystery, I love sci-fi mystery. I decided to set that one in Austin because I love the city of Austin. In many ways that series is my love letter to Austin, Texas. And it covers themes and tropes that I love. I wanted to do kind of like a Harry Dresden noir investigator sort of story, but I wanted it to be sci-fi, and that also is on me because turns out urban science fiction is not a super popular genre. Probably should have written an urban fantasy. It would have been easier to sell, and so I think over time I just get closer and closer to that sweet spot of what I like and what the audience likes. And I felt like when I released Relics of the Ancients and that Kickstarter, I finally had my first experience of nailing that.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I want to take just a moment to kind of separate from what you're talking about and what I'm talking about, because I think there's room for both. You talked about your editorial process and then ran right past it to, I think, an important perspective that once the book is ready, once it's edited and its quality is there, then what the public thinks of it is of little concern to you. And we can discuss why it hurts really bad when people don't love a choice that you made. But I'm sure. Especially talking about the time that is required to get editing so that any kind of third arm problems are taken care of. And then obviously there's going to be proofreading. And when I say third arm, I'm not talking about aliens, because I'm sure that some of the aliens in your series have at least 3 arms. But I'm talking about, it's an editor I spoke to a while ago, Lori, says her whole job as an editor for one of the big houses was to read through a manuscript and make sure that if there was, say, a sex scene, that somebody didn't have one hand on the pillow, another hand on the shoulder, and a third hand tickling their bum or something. You're like, wait a second, got a third arm problem here. And it's hard as a writer not to have those moments. I even had a little slip up that all of my editors didn't catch, where I changed vehicles from one book to the next book without thinking just that there was anything. And readers caught it. And they're like, wait a sec, why did we go from an Oldsmobile to a Chevy Savannah? Like there was never any mention of that change. Your readers will catch it. And those are moments where you let them down. So that's when I talk about quality. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about, less so than the story itself.
Yeah. I mean, when I first started, I did a lot of developmental editing because I, was under the impression that the book was I wasn't a good enough writer. The book wasn't good enough. Yep. And so I went through a lot of revisions, and I mean, I spent 14 months writing my first novel, including the editing process. The next one I actually wrote first, but then I revised heavily. The Gun Files first novel I rewrote from scratch because the first draft was no good. So the thing about me is that I have high standards and I care about quality. Yeah. And I know through editing stuff and rewriting stuff that the editing and revision can make it a little bit better. But it doesn't make the core story better. And I think readers care about the story. Obviously, you've got to not have a third arm. You've got to keep the consistent eye color. You have to be consistent within character. You have to be consistent in point of view. I consider all of that table stakes stuff that I've practiced, and I have a line editor and copy editor who keeps me honest. And I have my beta readers who sometimes more than that copy editor keep me honest, so they're going to catch all that stuff. But I no longer subscribe to the idea that writing is rewriting. I think that's a crock of shit.
Interesting.
Wow. I don't think it's true. I mean, if you look at some of the best authors in the world, they basically write first draft fiction, and not everybody can do that. It takes a lot of practice, but I don't think that the professional commercial genre fiction authors are writing 3, 4, 5, 6 drafts, right? Your literary authors sometimes brag about that. And I suspect that when people say they do that, they're exaggerating, right? Sure, I go through 4 drafts. I do my first draft. I reread it. I send it to my editor. I send it to my beta reader. That's 4 drafts, isn't it? Of course it's 4 drafts. Look how hard I'm working, right? But it feels like a little bit disingenuous sometimes. And I know a lot of full-time authors who do not revise their work heavily, right? I'll fix stuff if I see a better way to, do this scene or do that ending, whatever. But my process has always been write the best book you can write now and get better over time. And so even when I get feedback from an editor or from my beta readers, I will prioritize what I'm going to do now and what I'm not going to do. And a lot of that is based on how long it's going to take me. If your feedback is right and it's going to take me a year to do it, to rewrite this novel completely, or a month or 6 months or whatever it is, like I'm probably not going to do that because it's not a good use of my time as a writer. My job as a writer is to produce stories and to get better over time so that I can be the best storyteller I could be, not to shine this turd until it's a beautiful polished turd, right? Because no matter how much you shine it, it's still a turd, right? So I have books that don't sell. I don't bother going back to them now. And actually, if you look back at my catalog, the ones that sell the worst in some cases are the ones that I revised the most. So it doesn't actually make the story more marketable. It doesn't make it more sellable. It taught me a lot as a writer, but also it was miserable. And I know there are authors who love the revision, right? Like I know authors who will revise and just be so happy. Like I know people who hate first drafts and love the revision process, and good for them if that's what you want to do. But I really don't think it's going to necessarily make the story better. And if you're doing the same thing over and over, it's not going to make you better as a writer. It's the same thing as that. You ever hear about that study where they divided the class into equal portions and they said, this half of the class, segment A, make as many pots as you can. And this side of the class,
I've told
segment
this
B,
story on the podcast before.
Make the best pot possible, right?
Yeah.
And the segment B, as the story goes, and I haven't reviewed the actual data of the study myself, but I think it's very applicable as a metaphor to writing. I'm going to get better as a writer by writing 10 stories, than by rewriting the same story 10 times.
Yeah.
Because you get to see more nuance, you get to see more depth, you get to see more breadth. You just get more experience of putting a beginning, a middle, and an end together into a coherent narrative. So that's the camp I've kind of subscribed to, and I've chosen to go. One, because I don't like revising, and I've been down that road, and it didn't help me. It actually froze me. It ruined me. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and if I'm allowed or encouraged to do that sort of writing, it's just not good for me. So that's me. Your mileage may vary, but.
Yeah, I was going to say for sure we're on a slightly different trajectory in terms of that process. But you and I had shared in back and forth on Messenger that my first book, The 9 Lives of Marvin Longhigh, which is part of my package that I sell with Ammo, it took me 5 years to write. From the day that I first drafted it, it was about a male detective who was investigating African lice that inhabited the heads of only women and gave them a fatal disease. And so there's this whole huge kind of biochemical warfare, engineering of species and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it was awful. It was a horrible book, but I really fell in love with characters. So I took them and I transported them to kind of a similar place. And I wrote another draft of the novel with a real grab-assy detective. And I didn't like how he turned out. And the ending was so unbelievable. And then I thought, you know what? Right now, people want to read about a female protagonist. So I thought, why don't I flip-flop these two and write the woman as the lead? And it actually did work for me. So, brand new third draft book goes and I love it. And I start pitching it to an agent and an agent picks it up. And then we, proceed to write 2 more drafts of the book to get it where she thinks it's sellable. And it didn't end up, I did get an offer for it, but it didn't end up selling because they wanted to publish me in 2025. And I had come very close to the place where you're at, where I was like, F this, it's time to actually have readers and stop worrying about one damn book. And in the meantime, I've written a dozen books and they were all just sitting there waiting for the first one to break the seal, I guess. And you're like, this is stupid. So I've really come pretty close to thinking the way that you do. There's also a really popular kind of brassy self-published author that I can't think of his name right now. He has a blog and he writes thrillers. But he basically is like, hey, I'm happy publishing an 86%. If I think it's 86% ready, I'm not going to spend another year making it 100% ready.
80-20 rule, right? Yeah. And I mean, you said you spent 5 years writing that first book. How much of that was learning to write a story, learning story structure and plotting and characterization? It's like you didn't spend 5 years writing that one story. You spent 5 years learning to be a writer, and then you wrote the other stories. And I bet your other books were faster to write, right?
Much faster. Yeah. Now I'm putting together a book that I'm really proud of in 3 months, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Like, I feel like there's so many pervasive myths of publishing. And one of them is that rewriting is writing and that you should do 6 drafts. That's just a killer myth that is just going to destroy careers. And I think has. You know, I know a lot of authors who they just can't take the slog, you know, and luckily I'm stubborn as a mule and I got through it. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to do that again. And I had to learn that lesson myself, you know, just like, you know, I've had, not with big press, you know, not with New York publishing, but I've had like traditional deals, and I had to learn through that process that wasn't the process that was a good fit for me. But I didn't know that at the time, right? Like you can only learn through experience. So the best thing we could do for new writers is just try to break the myths early so that they could save themselves from that pain that I experienced revising and torturing myself about that book that never really sold.
Have you read any of Roberto Bolaño by any chance?
No.
Okay, so he wrote a novel called 2666. He also wrote The Savage Detectives. He was the kind of guy he's Chilean. He moved to Mexico. He wrote tons and tons of poetry. He was part of a really big scene. And all of his life, he's writing fiction and not really doing anything with it because the reputation of a fictionista was not okay for kind of the climate he lived in. And as he got close to dying, he wanted his children to have something to live on, and he wanted to leave them something. And so he started publishing all of his fiction. And 2666 is a highly revered book. Savage Detectives is highly revered. There's some sweet spot for him right there where he had enough time while he was still alive to revise those books into a position where they were just like perfect. And he published probably, I think, 6 or 8 books posthumously that they didn't have the time for him to really like dial them in. And I've read them and they're not great. So I think that's the small counter to the idea of the rewriting. There's a place for it, but everything that you're saying is true. It doesn't take the kind of snooty, highfalutin attitude of hard work. Do you set goals in life? Are you a goal setting kind of person?
Oh, I'm very much a goal setter. Yeah.
All right. Talk to me a little bit about goals. I had that feeling as you were talking.
Well, you know, I'm a systems thinker. What I do in my day job is I'm a experience and product design strategist. So, you know, my company builds apps, websites, brands, industrial products for big brands. Like, you know, Fortune 100 companies, Fortune 500 companies, innovative startups. And so as a strategist, I'm certainly a systems thinker, and I'm very goal oriented and motivated that way. And I've always found, you know, with writing, if I can set a goal and then break it down into smaller chunks, it's less overwhelming. So I started with, you know, word count goals, and now there are, you know, sales goals, revenue goals, marketing goals, publishing goals, as well as the writing goals. So yeah, that's just kind of how I am, how I think, how I motivate myself.
Yeah. I'm a goal setter as well. Part of the reason I asked is that you have at least touched on a couple of times the idea of hard work being a little bit of an ego trip. I think that some people think that working really, really hard makes them better people. So I just have 3 goals that I have in my office. Exactly. The achiever, the guy who wakes up at 5 and doesn't go to bed until midnight. And, you know, every hour is spent productively. One of my goals is play is a massive part of my life, and I'm not embarrassed to talk about it. I want people to know me as the guy who's happy to stop what I'm doing and go play for a little while, whether that's like Zelda with my kids or going down to the beach and swimming in the water, something like that.
Yeah, totally. That stuff feeds your soul, man. You can't work all the time. It's impossible. I mean, people who say that, they're putting on a front, in my opinion. Nobody works that hard all the time. But I think some people hold it up as like a trophy. Like, look how hard I worked. Yes. Look at my success, you know? And I think a lot of that has to do with personality types too. I like achievement. I care about it, but it's not my number one priority, you know?
Yeah. So changing direction a little bit, you are, let's say, moderately successful on Amazon. You're moving enough copies that most people envy where you're at with Amazon, but you also decided that you wanted to do direct fulfillment with Ammo. So talk to me a little bit about retailers, including Amazon, and why it wasn't ultimately enough for you.
So when I got into publishing in 2015, like the only model that existed that was successful was KU, right? There are certainly people who were wide, but they were, you know, formerly traditionally published, or, you know, had this deal or that distribution strategy or whatever. And KU, especially in the sci-fi genre, was where it was at, especially rapid releasing into KU. I tried it, and, you know, whether it was those series or those book books or my approach to marketing or my audience size at the time, which in 2015 was 0. It just didn't work for me, right? I don't write fast enough to make it work. And when I did save up 3 books and rapid release them, we happened to do it at the beginning of a pandemic, which you might say was not great timing. So it just didn't work for me. And I think what I realized was that this wide, long-term direct sales strategy is just a much better fit for who I am as a person, as a strategic person, as somebody who produces 2 or 3 books a year rather than a book or 2 a month, as a person who also does not like to be, have all my eggs in one basket, right? Like I like to be diversified, and I plan to do this long term. I just cannot put all my eggs in one basket. I need to have, a lot of different channels and a lot of different opportunities, and putting my books everywhere is a much better strategy for me. It gives me freedom and control, right? I can control when I want to do promotions. I can control my pricing. I can control whether I'm selling direct or not, right? Like part of the drawback of Kindle Unlimited is that if you put your books in there, you can't do anything else with them. Right. I can't market them elsewhere. I can't put them in a bundle. I can't sell them direct, and people who are in KU and doing things like Kickstarter have to do like special editions, or you have to do it before. So, there's just a lot of limitations around exclusivity, and it doesn't feel good to me. And as a strategist, I spent a lot of time doing content strategy over the last several years, like just the all in on KU is just antithetical to my whole philosophy around marketing and life. And the irony in all this, Jody, is that when I decided to give up chasing what everybody else told me was the right thing to do was when I started experiencing a new level of success, right? A new level of validation, right? I went into KU. I've got over 1 million page reads in KU, right? But they add up over the years. Like at the time I went into KU and it was like, expect the world. And it was just, nothing, just nothing really. When I went wide with my books, started promoting them how I wanted to promote them, I started getting BookBub deals. I ran the Kickstarter, right? My mind opened to new possibilities. I started selling direct. I mean, I've made thousands of dollars selling on my Shopify store this year that I would not be able to do any of that if I was in KU. It really limits your options. It's the same reason why I think my publishing path, and I still consider myself an independent author, although I guess you'd call me a hybrid author because I do still have like the Gun Files audiobooks are with Audible Studios still. They will be for a while. But I took back the Gun Files ebooks and print book rights because the way that they were published, they were stuck in KU and I couldn't promote them. They weren't mine to promote. They were the publishers to promote. And so in order to breathe new life into those books, to write the rest of the series that I want to write, I needed to take them back, to take back control. And my value system prioritizes things like creative control and freedom to do what I want to do. And KU is just the opposite of that for me. So I decided I'm not going to play that rat race game. I'm just going to get out of it. I'm going to run my own game. And I've made more money doing that than I ever had in KU. So, absolutely. It's just validation that what works for you, right? And KU works great for some people. I'm just not that person.
Yeah. I think the one caveat that I would say is to authors who have fewer books out there, KU gives you the ability to have a low barrier to entrance. If you've written something that's really great, that resonates, get in there and let some people read it, accumulate some reviews, accumulate some page reads. You're going to get people who get back to you and say, hey, this didn't work out really well for me, or this is why I didn't like it. And they might not even leave a review, but they just there's just this, there are people out there. I don't understand them because I'm not this way. And I'm the first to say it. I'm not altruistic. I'm not trying to help anybody along the way. I'm trying to help me. And there are times where I get really invested in a person and I do help them because I love or care about them. But generally speaking, I'm out for me. So when people get to you and they say, hey, I noticed this element in your story that really didn't work for me, let the ego down. Okay. I can think about that. The next book, I can incorporate that feedback and write a better book. So it's great to be in KU when you're early on and just really keep the ego suppressed and let the community feedback help you along the way. That would be the place where I would see the advantage to KU.
Well, and again, it's not that any of these are bad strategies. Is it the right strategy for you?
Sure.
at that time, right? And when you just have one book, like the direct sales stuff is hard. It's really hard.
Yes.
You're not going to experience a lot of success if you're trying to, use this strategy that we're using to sell direct on a Shopify store. If you only have one book, you got to move a lot of units just to cover the operational costs and the advertising costs of one book. It's going to be an uphill battle. So like in that case, like Matt in 2015 deciding to go into KU was a good strategic move at the time because I had one book. I'd never published anything. I'd never marketed anything. I didn't have a list, right? Like I had to figure everything out, and it gave me access to an audience that read the book. Even if it was just in small numbers, right? That gave me a start, right? Gave me the start to my list, the start to my marketing, the start to my brand, the start to, like learning as a writer, what people thought about a finished story rather than just a draft that I had sent them. So I mean, I think there are certainly people who are into that and are at the right time in their career where it makes sense. I also know authors who like put books wide, leave them there for a couple of years, take them out and put them back in KU for a run. Like, there are good marketing reasons to do that stuff. But the reason I haven't done that yet is, again, it's not right for me. It's not right for me right now. But that doesn't mean it won't be in the future, right? Like I could imagine a scenario 10 years from now where this series has kind of died. It's not really doing much. I want to breathe some new life back into it. I've got a chunk of cash to spend on advertising, and I'm going to throw it in KU and pump it and see what happens. And like, that could be great, but, where I am right now, it just doesn't make sense. And, I know what's right for me, and I'm always trying to be very careful to speak in this context. And I think some people hear advice and they take it as universal advice, right? But it's coming from me. And if you know who I am as a person, you know why that makes sense for me. But I always like to couch it in like, this is what makes sense to me and why I do things. But, your mileage may vary. You just don't know what another person is doing or experiencing.
Yeah. You've got, I already talked to David Scherer. He's the counterpart to Lydia Scherer, who sells her books through Ammo. And, they've done all kinds of different things. They've done, KU, they've done, Ammo, they've done Kickstarter. And then soon I've got Jennifer Yanez and Jonathan Yanez. They do. I'm so excited to release their episode because of the things they're doing from a public standpoint. I feel like I just barely scratched the surface.
Totally.
Jonathan and Jennifer Yanez will be on soon, and they actually always have a series in KU, something that they're really strongly pushing in KU so that they can keep that bestseller kind of thing going over there. And then they've got series that they only do direct. There's so many different ways to do it. And I before we jump into the Ammo bit, because I do want to spend a significant amount of time talking that through with you, I guess I wanted to talk about the feeling of stuckness that you get, because I think there's a reason for all of us that we eventually come to Ammo. And before we actually talk about what Ammo is, talk a little bit about the stuckness feeling, because I know that you've had it before and it's driven you in some way.
Yeah, it's like, the feeling where you're trying all sorts of things and like none of it's working, right? It's like you're just throwing stuff at the wall and it's all just sliding down and piling up on the floor. You're like just failure after failure after failure. It can really feel like that when you're doing marketing sometimes. One, you either don't have enough feedback, right? You're not getting the results you want. Whatever you're doing isn't resonating with an audience. And certainly the feeling of stuckness happens in your writing too, right? Like I've gotten to the midpoint of a book and gone, well, I have no idea what happens next. And I just need to like step back and percolate on it for a while, and then it becomes so obvious. So it's a difficult thing. What I've come to realize is that once you have the process, it's just a matter of trying things until you figure out what works. And sometimes we get stuck in this little circle. So the cool thing about Ammo is that there's a group of people that you can talk to, and there's experts that you can go to, data review calls with to ask their advice. And, at first when I started it, I was trying to really follow the system to make sure I was doing everything step by step, because I get creative and I start changing things. And then I'm like, why is nothing working? So I thought, okay, if I'm going to implement this, I'm going to do it exactly as he says, so that when I get stuck, my changes aren't the issue, right? Like I don't want to be the one that is in the way of like putting myself in the way of being successful, right? So I thought I'm going to follow the rules. I'm going to do exactly what he says. And when when it starts working, then I can, get creative, because it's like with the writing, right? Like, everybody loves when a writer breaks the rules, but they have to break them well. And you can't do that until you know what the rules are and how to follow them. So that's kind of how I feel about with the direct sales and marketing stuff. Like, I'm going to follow the rules to make sure I'm doing it best practices, doing it right. And then once I know what I'm doing, I can break the rules. And at that point, it'll be a little bit easier to figure out why things are going wrong, because I know what right feels like.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think that for myself, and it is a good lead into the ammo process, I still can't tell you with certainty that I know what good feels like. I know what moving in the right direction feels like, and I'm starting to learn what is going on internally, because there's this huge, and I can't speak for every writer, but I can definitely speak for me. There's a huge emotional weight on thinking something's great and not getting the kind of feedback that you're expecting. And so that often induces stubbornness for me in this program, is that I'll be doing something and I'm like, I know that this is right. Why is no one else responding to it? And it can just be very, very frustrating if I'm not willing to adapt. Have you had some of that experience yourself?
Yeah, I mean, like the classic example is like you're running some headline tests and you're looking at the data and you're like, but this one is better.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I think, because if the market responds to that one, and I'm marketing my books, like, I need to do what the market wants. It's not like this tagline fits my book just fine. I just think it's the lame one, but it won the test. It won every test over and over again. Like, I just, at a certain point, I'm like, fine, I'm just going to follow the data. And it's such a different process to writing. But certainly, like, when people publish a book that they think is the bee's knees, right, and then they get bad reviews, like, it could probably feel like that too, but it's like somebody's insulting your ugly baby. But I think, like, the taglines that I think should be good don't work. Images I think should be good don't work. It annoys me. I don't feel like I want to put my face on everything, but my stupid face keeps winning creative tests. So I'm gonna keep using my stupid face because it sells books.
That's funny.
I don't love it. It's like, I remember Steve said this in the course, like, this photo of me in the pink suit sells books.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but it does. And so I'm just going to use that. So I think you just have to have different principles and different priorities when you're trying to sell your books versus when you're trying to write your books. If you're writing and you're in the creation zone, you have your creator's hat on, your storyteller's hat on. You should do what you want to do, because that's your unique voice and you need to tell the story, and people love your unique voice. So you should commit to it, right? Like, don't try to edit yourself down to appeal to an audience. Be who you are, and then find the audience that appeals to your work, or who find your work appealing. But with marketing, it's not really about your opinion at all. You don't get to decide what is quality. The market decides. And so if you're marketing your books, let the market decide. Follow the data. Don't be egotistical or stubborn about it. And that's something that I've had to come to terms with, because I'm like, this artwork I paid $500 for should definitely sell, right? But people keep clicking my stupid face, so I'm just going to use that. Is what it is. I think, like, right now I'm trying to get book covers on the images to work on Facebook ads. Like, everybody says the best practice is put book covers on there, and I test it and it doesn't work. And I test it again and it doesn't work. And I was like, I don't know why, but it ain't working. I tested it in like a traffic click test. And the images of me with the tagline and no book covers wins hands down every time. And we're talking like double the conversion rate, half the cost, right? Yeah. And then I was like, okay, well, I heard someone say that, even though the image with book covers failed, it didn't win the traffic test. It didn't do badly. So they went ahead and tried it on their sales ads, and it worked. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll just try one in a sales ad and it'll work. Sure. And it worked for 2 days. And then the click-through rate went to 1.7 and it just stayed there. And I was like, well, that's it. Okay. Right. Yeah. So it just tanked immediately. And, and the only difference, like, I've used that image elsewhere. The only difference was the book covers. So, and it's the same copy as the other one. So, I'm just trying to let the market tell me what's working and read market signals, rather than trying to force my idea, right? It's kind of the same thing to me as if, like, you're with a group of friends and you're like, yeah, let's go do this. And they're all like, no, I don't really want to go to that restaurant. I don't really like it. The bathrooms aren't clean. You're like, no, this is the best place to eat, you have to go, like, you're going to just lose your friends at that point. They're not going to
Yeah.
go with you. So you can't make the market move in a certain direction. All you could do is read it and respond to it. And I think the cool thing about ammo is that it teaches you a process to do that.
Yeah.
And as long as you follow the process, then, you know, you can make it work.
My listeners are tired of me saying this over and over, so I'll try to keep it short. But I mean, I've tried a significant number of programs. I've paid a really significant amount of money to be part of programs that promise results. And it got to the point where I was so trigger shy that when ammo came along, everything that I was reading told me it was a good choice, and I just was not willing to make the investment until finally I emailed Steve and basically threatened him. I was like, if it doesn't work like planned, I promise I'm taking my refund and I'm going to go splatter that all over the internet. So to be here in this position now, to be advocating for the ammo program, to have a podcast that's in the ammo family is kind of a crazy journey for me. It's like, it works so well. And what you said, I think, encapsulates it as well as anybody that I've heard. It gives you a process that if you just follow the process, and it's almost like put the logic aside, because the logic is already pre-digested for you of the program.
That's right.
Watch the videos, do the videos, don't question why, just do. And I think a lot of people say they want that until they get it. And then they're like, I don't like this. This defies my unique author persona. And you're like, no, it doesn't.
Right.
Marketing is a separate thing. Just do.
That's right. Running the business is separate from creating the books. They're two different hats you have to wear. And I think, you know, there's certainly some people who just aren't ready for ammo.
Yep.
I was lucky enough to find it when I was ready, because if I had found it a year ago, I wouldn't have been in a position to take advantage of it.
Okay. Say more on that. Why?
I didn't have enough books.
Okay.
Didn't have enough books. Full stop. I had, in this series, I now have 6 books, 3 novels and 3 novellas, and that package is appealing, and I can sell it at a certain price point, and it's a high enough price point that I can make a margin on it. Yeah, you know, last year I only would have had 3 books to sell in that package, and it would have been harder. It would have been a much more difficult proposition. Now, could I have learned what headlines work best, what images work best, how to optimize my page? Like, yeah, I could have made some headway. But because now the full funnel is there, like I have all 6 books, and, you know, I had a novel come out in April, and the last novella is coming out. I haven't even published it on Amazon yet. It's released to Kickstarter backers. It's coming out like next week or something, as soon as I find time to publish it. The 2 of the 6 books I'm selling came out this year, right? So last year I was not ready. And again, when I started ammo, I didn't have those books, right? So I started with 4 books, and then I had the 5th. And then I added the 6th, and now that's complete. And I've got 4 audiobooks, and I'm producing the last 2 novellas. So like I'm building it up, and I was able to start just enough ahead of when those books were ready to make enough progress in the course to get it to work for me. But like, do I think that so I have 2 other series, right? I've got the Relics of the Ancient Space Opera. I've got the Translocator trilogy. And then I've got the Gun Files. The Translocator trilogy is Portal Fiction, but there's only 3 novels and there's 2 short stories. I'm not sure I could make that funnel work profitable.
Interesting.
I don't know if I could. It gives me enough pause that I don't really want to go invest in that right now. One, I don't own the audio to it, right? So I really only have an ebook in print. There's only 3 novels and 2 short stories, right? Not even novellas. They're short stories. So it just doesn't seem high enough value to earn back the ad spend, knowing what I know about how much I'm spending on ads. And then you couple that with it's an off genre, like niche sort of thing, and it just makes it that much harder to sell. So I think like I wasn't really ready until this year. And when I saw ammo, I was like, oh, I'm finally ready to do something like this. So it was just good timing on his part, I guess, because I think I found it through an interview on the Creative Pen. So.
Oh,
good job,
awesome.
Steve.
Yeah. And I love Joanna. She's amazing.
Oh yeah. She's great.
There are some other podcasts out there that I think promise the world and don't deliver. And I'm just trying to not necessarily like smear them, but you've probably heard of them, and you've probably been tempted because they're really good at getting you razzed up and emotionally feeling like great. There's a huge difference between feeling emotionally great and having great success.
Yeah, like let's talk about all the punches I've taken, right? Like I've taken other ads courses that didn't work for me. I've spent tons of money on Amazon ads that I lost money on. I've spent tons of money on Facebook ads to promote, new releases and stuff through the years where, I was kind of just spending money, hoping and praying that it would work, because I don't have any visibility into funnel conversion data when I'm sending traffic to Amazon. And so like I've tried all sorts of stuff that has not worked for me. And I know people who have done the same stuff and got it to work for them. It's not necessarily that the program is incorrect or that what they're saying isn't working for someone. It just didn't work for me with my books at that point in time, knowing what I know with my skills. Right. Yeah. So I've, learned through the years what works and what doesn't work. And that's kind of led me, like, it's kind of like following the market signals, right? Like, oh, this one has a better click-through rate. This one is a lower cost. I've learned through doing these courses, like that one didn't work. I should probably not waste money on Amazon ads because they're not working for me. And there are probably a number of reasons and a number of different things I could try, but I've chosen not to go that route anymore.
Yeah. So let's take one quick pit stop diversion to talk about reviews, because I think that that's one thing that's really important about the ammo process. So maybe it's not even a pit stop or a diversion. It's just let's put a pin in it and say, well, how do you go about getting reviews before you're really ready for ammo? Because that's been a huge thing that I've noticed is that the reviews have directly correlated with the success of the sales funnel.
Okay. When it comes to reviews, here's what I've done. When I launch books, I built an ARC team, like an advanced review copy team, and I would send out free copies of every book I released and ask them to review. And that kind of gets the engine moving. The other thing that I've gotten a bunch of reviews from is just promoting my books, right? Like if you get a BookBub deal and thousands of people download your book, then you're going to get a few reviews out of it. There are also review services that you could use. You could send your book to another author in your genre and see if you can get a quote or a testimonial from them to use on your page. I haven't done that. I've just used reader reviews because I have them, but I spent a lot of time over the years, like giving out review copies and trying to get people to leave reviews of my work, because at the time, like in KU especially, it was super important to get good reviews early so that while you have that 30-day window to get the new release tag, the reviews are bolstering the algorithm and yada, yada, yada. So I've trained my readers over the years to leave reviews on Amazon. I worry less and less about the reviews. But like, and now that they've combined the ratings and reviews, like Starfighter Down has almost 900 ratings, but 44 reviews, I think, like written reviews.
Interesting. Okay.
So I went over, all the channels, all the platforms, all the retailers. I looked everywhere to pull reviews together for that book, across all three books actually, and the novellas. So I just like pulled all the reviews together and like picked my favorite ones, tested a few of them, and started using those. But it's like it's true with any product you're selling online. Like social proof is very important still, and probably always will be, because people are like, is this a scam? Is it, how do I know it's good?
So hard to tell.
People just, they need that social proof, right? Like we're social animals, so they need to see that somebody else enjoyed this, that it's worth the money, to reassure them. So it is very important. But I just pulled them from Amazon, from BookBub, from Goodreads, wherever I could find reviews. I get them.
So we're going to talk about social media, and then we're going to talk about actual financial investment. How active are you on social media, and why?
So I have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I'm not going to get on TikTok. I'm sorry. Don't ask me. I am just not interested. Twitter, I was like a daily Twitter user for years. Now, and I had an Instagram account when it first opened because I was like into photography at the time.
Yep.
Instagram went a different direction. They were acquired by Facebook at some point. Now they are part of the Facebook machine. So I have all three accounts. The only one I really use to engage with my fans on is Facebook. I'll occasionally post something on Twitter or Instagram. And here's why. Facebook actually works for me. It helps me reach readers. I've only got like 1,000 followers. It's pretty small for an author on there. But it's the only one where people are engaged. They like and comment and respond to my posts. They see stuff. Twitter just feels like shouting into the void, and Instagram, I just can't be bothered to be on. I don't really like it. Like, all the women I'm like my wife, my sister, I know other people who like Instagram. A lot of people like Instagram. It's great for, artists. It's great for photographers. It's great for models. It's, awesome to like share your life with people. There's tons of influencers on there. It's a platform that works, but I don't like it, so it's not going to work for me. So Facebook's the only thing that's worked. And here's the other reason. When I launched the Kickstarter in 2021, Kickstarter is a direct sales platform. You can crowdfund your project, but they're not just giving you money. They're not donating money, right? Like they're buying a product that you are then shipping to them. So it's direct sales platform. They are really good at giving you access to data that is related to your campaign. So when I'm running a Kickstarter, I could see how many backers Kickstarter website drove, how many backers Kickstarter's emails drove, how many backers my personal profile drove, how many backers my page drove, Facebook page drove, how many backers Twitter and Instagram drove. Yeah. I can tell you that after raising $13,000 for that trilogy, that $0 came from Twitter. And at that point, I was like, peace, I'm out. Like, bye. This is a waste of time because I'm on there to promote my books. Like, yes, I like engaging with people. I enjoy the interaction. I think Twitter's really fun. It was sucking so much time and so much of my mental energy, and I got nothing from it. In terms of book marketing. Now I get personal value from it, but for me, I started it as a personal profile and I made it into my author profile. If it's not going to help sell books, then I don't want to waste my time there. So I've narrowed it down to one platform, Facebook, my Facebook page. I don't even post author stuff on my profile anymore. It's only the page. I run ads to the page and I post occasionally on the page. Like we're talking like once or twice a week, not that often. And then I have my email list, which, again, I told you I have 1,000 Facebook followers, like a few hundred people on Instagram, maybe 1,500 on Twitter or whatever. And I have like 6,000 people on my email list. So that's way bigger than any of those social numbers, right? And that's what matters because I can reach them directly. It's in their inbox. They could choose not to open it, but I know enough people do that. Like that and Facebook are what drove funds for the Kickstarter. Facebook ads are what drives ammo sales, so.
Yeah, one email to 6,000 people that's well targeted and they opted into knowingly just drives so much results compared to anything else that you can do. And then it does come down to a numbers game because, if you have 6,000 people there and the majority of them have bought your first book, you can't necessarily keep hammering more sales of the first book. So that's when it gets really important to put out a new book and get them excited again. I want to talk about money because that's something I haven't talked a ton about. Gordon has been on the show and he, I think, alluded to it, but didn't really talk about it. We didn't discuss money, and I think it's a really important piece of ammo. You've already said that having several books out is a key to being successful. Also, a mindset about spending money. So many authors really, really hold tightly to their money and don't want to spend until the book is making money. And as business people, we understand you don't necessarily have to spend money to make money, but you have to be willing to spend money. And ammo is going to come with a cost in order to advertise, plus to sign up for the program. So talk a little bit about, you don't have to share specific numbers if you're not comfortable with it, but share with me the kind of investment and what it feels like to move that money away from yourself.
Yeah, it's scary. But I think, the mindset shift that Steve teaches in the course is that you're buying data, you're buying information, you're buying learning. And if you can position it that way, I think it becomes a little bit more palatable. It also helps once you get your first funnel working that now when I spend money, I make it back at least. I'd like to make a profit, but at least I know I'm not losing money now. When I first started the course though, I had to budget like how much I was willing to spend. The tools are not cheap. Spending money on Facebook ads is not cheap. And you only go as fast as you're willing to spend money, right? So if you're running an experiment, you only spend $5 a day, you're going to be waiting days for the results of that experiment to come in. If you're spending $40 a day, that experiment's done in 24 hours.
Or even less.
So, or less. So, that's a mindset shift. It's hard to do. Obviously, you have to have the money to spend in the beginning, right? And you have to have a product that is valuable enough that you can charge enough to make a profit on, right? Because, I'm not giving money away here. I'm running a business. So, that was definitely a mindset shift. I have learned over the years of freelancing and running a business and running our household finances, although my wife is the one that has the master's in accounting, and she's brilliant and really good with money. Like, compared to me, I'm a financial idiot compared to her. She's just brilliant. And when I have spreadsheet problems, I go, please, Shelly, help me, because I don't know what I'm doing. So she's great. And she's taught me a lot about money. I say, actually, my wife has probably taught me more about money than anybody I know. Yeah. And, we're really good about keeping a budget and knowing how much money we're spending and keeping track of that stuff. And I do my books at the end of every month because I'm running a business, even on months where I lose money. And those are the hardest months to do the bookkeeping, right? And the months that you've lost money, and those happen, right? Like, especially in publishing, it tends to be a spike and long tail business. Like with the Kickstarter, I raised $13,000. My bank account looked great, but I knew that money was earmarked for printing costs and shipping and production of t-shirts and the Starfighter models and the bookmarks and the stickers and etc. And then I use some of it to fund the audio production. I use some of it to market. So, you have to know where your money's going. And I think that's the key. If you have, bad money habits or just like some mixed emotions or, some blockers around money, it's best to get those cleared up first. Yeah. And I learned a long time ago, I think it was actually from John Scalzi's blog, where he was kind of breaking down what his income as a writer looks like, that being a full-time writer is much more about the finances than it is your ability as a storyteller. And I think a lot of people don't know how to divorce the two. They think, if I make money, I must be a good writer. But that's actually not true. There are a bunch of brilliant books published all the time, every week probably, that never reach an audience. And there are a bunch of mediocre books that sell buku tons. So, your ability to make money with your books is not tied to your value as a storyteller or as a creative person. They are two separate skills, and you need to learn both in order to be in business as a writer.
Yeah. You know what I'm afraid of, man, as we're getting to this point in the conversation, I just had this sort of realization. I'm afraid that there are people listening right now who don't have the right personality type to even hear what you're saying. It scares me a little bit.
It's true.
I mean that. Yeah. Like, I realize as you're saying everything you're saying, one, my wife has a minor in art, graphic design type stuff, but she majored in accounting. She worked for an accountant for a long time. Same kind of thing. I was in real estate investing for years and built up a really large amount of money just through real estate investing. So money is deeply important to me, and I'm the same in my brain about money as the things that you've talked about. And so when I saw Ammo, I think there was that flicker of recognition. I was like, aha, that's the missing piece. It's not being a better writer. It's not about being a better writer. It's about finding a program that gets money and understands how to deploy money to make money.
Right.
I'm afraid, that there's going to be people who are like, my artistic vision. What about
Well, and there's going to be tons of people who are like, I don't have money problems. Like, I don't have any problem with money, but they've got $15,000 of credit card debt, right? Like, I don't carry credit card debt for that reason, especially for my business, right? It's cash business, because I know that the money going out is gone and it's spent, and the money coming in is mine, and I don't owe it to anybody. And it took me years, decades, to clear these money challenges. These, I don't even know what you'd call them, like money myths, maybe, to get to the point where I was comfortable with it. And like I said, I ran a freelance business where I was selling content strategy services for 5 years. Like, I had to do my taxes and make run my business as an S corp for a while, and hire freelancers and like deal with payroll and send invoices. Like, I've had a lot of experience and a lot of practice doing that. And it would be crazy for me not to consider that stuff. But, the dirty secret of publishing is that a lot of full-time authors have spouses with full-time jobs and healthcare plans and retirements, military benefits.
Every time I talk to somebody who brags about being a full-time author, they've got a spouse or a partner
support system. They've got a support system. Absolutely. And of course they do, because we're human beings and we live in community and we have support systems. But, that I wish I could go back and find it. It's in the archive somewhere. John Scalzi's written a couple times about like the business of being an author. Here's how I make my money. Here's what it looks like. And I think everybody would benefit from reading those articles from somebody who's being honest with them about it, because being a full-time writer is like being full-time as a writer is about money, not the story.
Yeah. I love it, man. Do send me those links, because I want to get them in the show notes for this episode.
I'll find them.
with that in mind, we are at an hour, so I'm going to wrap things up. It sounds to me like it's pretty easy to find you out there if people want your books, but what's the best place to connect with you? And do you want to include any version of your Doorbuster deal in the show notes?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can send you a link to that. Okay. But the best place to find me online is mgherron.com, mgherron.com. I'm on Facebook at mgherron and Twitter and Instagram, although I don't check those that often, as we talked about. The best place really is mgherron.com. All my books are there, a link to my stores there, and yeah, I'll send you a link to the Doorbuster so that people can check out the Relics of the Ancient series, an ebook or audiobook if they want.
Fantastic. It's been a ton of fun. I do have one last question. I just realized as we were wrapping, why MG Herron? We all have our author name story, and curious about yours.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truth is that I had the domain name, I had the Twitter handle, and I had other articles and stuff, although all this stuff is like lost in the ether of the internet now, but I had other stuff published under Matt Herron, and I was doing freelance work as Matt Herron, and I wanted to differentiate my author persona from my nonfiction content strategy persona, and MG Herron just felt right at the time. I wish I didn't put the dots in it, but we live with our mistakes sometimes, and it's worked out for me. So I'm committed to it. I'm going to go with it for now.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to TRBM. The theme music was provided by the ever-talented Christopher Talon. And hey, if you liked what you heard, share this show with other readers, because what's the point of telling stories if nobody's listening?